And we're live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into tonight's recap of Pistons versus the Suns, I want to give a quick shout out to Grind Clothing Co., our merch sponsor. We have our first drop, and those links below are in the description below and in our YouTube bio. And you can also find Grind Clothing Co. on Instagram, and you can find all of our links on Grind's Instagram. We are here in Detroit. We were at this game live in the flesh. We have our notes. The final score of tonight's game was 116-100 in the Phoenix Suns' favor. What are some of your first thoughts for tonight's game, Ryan?
We were playing against a good playoff caliber team that's been in the championship recently.
Yeah.
And so what outcome do you expect? I expect a loss. Now, we don't have to say, oh, what do you mean by that? I want to say, yeah, it would have been nice if it would have been more competitive and it would have been a little bit closer of a score.
Yeah.
100-116 just doesn't do it justice. Jaden Ivey hit that three to make it 100 within like 30 seconds after the game.
Yeah.
So realistically, it was 116-97 the final score tonight. But against a playoff team, I would have liked to see more competition.
Right. The Phoenix Suns are a team that have a lot of chemistry. They're a team that's been playing together for a couple of years now. They made that run in the finals 2 seasons ago. So even without their star player, Devin Booker, you see guys like Chris Paul that didn't necessarily make a big impact on the score, but finished with about 14 assists, I believe. So he's a savvy veteran point guard that's running your offense. And then you have great key role players surrounding a guy like Devin Booker when he's in. So these guys have gained chemistry. A point that I wanted to make was, and it's a kind of a point I make in a lot of recaps, is I believe with a young team like the Pistons, the first 6 minutes or the first quarter decides what the final score is going to be. And the Suns started within the first 3 minutes with an 11-3 run. When we see that happen early, especially against a savvy team like the Suns, it's hard to come back if you let the score get away too far early, because then you have to make up with it within 3 quarters. But they're a team that's not going to let up, and they're not going to, once they get that momentum, they're not letting you take it back. So it's unfortunate to see a start like that.
Yeah, and then you look at pretty much the whole game. Monty had pretty much the reserves in. Majority of the game. Like Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton and Mikal Bridges and all of them really only saw the floor in like the first quarter, half of the second quarter, and then it was all reserves up until pretty much the late third, early fourth quarter. Yeah. So when you have the reserves in, that's a time and opportunity to really gain those points back and gain a momentum. But what the outcome ended up being is just turnovers, taking bad shots, not being calm and slowing the game down, just rushing into everything. And yeah, you could say, yeah, it's because we're a young team, and that would be a correct answer.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, you have guys like Saddiq Bey, who's in his third year, or Bojan, who's had a long career pretty much at this point.
Right.
You have these guys where they should be able to slow down the game and control it. They shouldn't have to rush into every single shot that they take. And then you saw DeAndre Ayton just go off on us.
Yeah.
And you could be like, Duren, what the heck? Why didn't you stop that? But even Duren, as long and big as he is, he's actually still smaller than Ayton.
Yeah, he is. Ayton finished with 31 points, 16 rebounds, 2 assists on 13 of 15 shooting in 31 minutes. He is a very good center, and I would consider DeAndre Ayton to be a premier center in today's NBA. He is a hot commodity to all 31 other teams, because I think anybody would take him, even if you're a Minnesota Timberwolves with a guy like Cat. I'm taking Ayton. He is just so good, and I'm a big fan of Ayton. I would really like to see him in Detroit, but I want Jalen Duren to develop, and we'll talk about more about Duren in a little bit. But another thing that has to kind of be pointed out is you made mention about turnovers. We finished with 16 turnovers. Now, that number doesn't necessarily jump at you as like a huge number because the Suns matched that with 16.
Yeah.
But turnovers happened at bad times in tonight's game when they were inopportune times when our offense is slow, looking kind of sluggish, and then boom, there's a Killian turnover, or boom, there's a Isaiah Livers turnover. They just happened at bad points. So yes, 16 necessarily when you're looking at that doesn't hit you in the face and you're like, oh, well, there's the reason. But you can blame turnovers in this game because they happened at bad times. Another thing that the Pistons got destroyed on, quite frankly, is the Suns finished with 47 rebounds, and that is just not good. That's not cutting it. And I think, DeAndre Ayton is a lot to blame for that, finishing with 15. So that definitely is not the perfect situation looking at a game after 4 quarters. Jalen Duren has had last night 13 points, 13 rebounds against the Charlotte Hornets, and we won. Tonight, Duren finished with 1 point, 6 rebounds, 4 fouls, and we lost. Now, Ryan, I want to ask you, are the Pistons at a point where Jalen Duren's play decides a win or loss?
It's a yes and no.
Right.
Because you can look at it in 2 ways. Is he starting to become more of like an Andre Drummond-esque player? Yes, he is.
Yes.
And what did us as Pistons do during that Andre Drummond era? We relied on him.
Right.
But this team is different in the sense that in the Drummond era, you had Reggie Jackson, but he wasn't the guy.
Right.
Now we're at a point where we have multiple guys, and we have Bojan, Sadiq, Jaden Ivey, Cade when he's back. We have Killian. There's so many different playmakers on this team where it shouldn't just rely on a young 19-year-old rookie to carry the load. But I will say, if he didn't get into foul trouble tonight, I think he would have had or produced a much better game than what he did.
Yeah.
Because how are we going to stop Duren majority of the time? He shot the ball. He was what, over 2? That's not normal for him.
Right.
He normally makes a shot at least.
Right.
He had a point in the game where he missed a wide open layup. Yeah. And you're going, oh my goodness, what is going on right now?
Right.
But you got to stay patient because there's a point in a season where there's at least one game where a rookie plays bad. And we just got to expect it. Yeah. We can't go out and say, oh, he's going to get 13 and 13 every night. Yeah. No, you can't expect that.
Right.
But to answer your question, I think it's a 50-50 because, yes, we can rely on him, but he doesn't necessarily have to be the guy to step up.
Right. And back in the Drummond era, he had Jackson, but he didn't really have help most of those seasons. He had great numbers every night, but it's hard to determine. Ivey's play tonight wasn't amazing by any means. 13 points, ended with 4 fouls. But something I want to talk about was he finished with 6 assists. And these assists weren't just going through the motions, kind of set up assists. These were savvy, ahead of his time type of assists. So I kind of want to point out how Jaden Ivey's passing ability is a lot better than what Pistons fans give him credit for. Something that we were worried about was because when he was at Purdue, he was the focal point of the offense. He controlled the offense and the offense worked through him, where now at the next level, playing in the NBA, having some good talented players around him, he has learned how to spread the ball and do it efficiently and not do it with too many turnovers. So it was nice. He finished with, I believe, 3 turnovers, which for him, I'll take that, especially as a starting point guard. If the starting point guard only finishes with 3 turnovers, by all means, I'll take that and especially with 6 assists at the end of 4 quarters. So I just kind of wanted to mention how Jaden Ivey's passing ability has been looking very good with Killian coming off the bench and him stepping up with starting minutes.
Yeah, this is exactly what everybody expected to see from him while he was at Purdue.
Yeah.
And it happened while he was at Purdue. But now that he's in the NBA, he didn't start off like he has been. But now he's starting to get more relaxed, get into the groove of things, getting used to playing in the NBA because the NBA is much faster than college.
Yeah.
So he's starting to build trust with everybody, get used to the atmosphere. And you can really tell because now on a nightly basis, he's getting from at least 4 to 10 assists a game. And I'm not complaining.
No.
Because it just shows you his character is building. He's improving as a player. And you can see the progression every single night he steps on the court.
Yeah, for sure. Something that if you look at the box score that jumps out to you is Saddiq Bey coming off the bench with 25 points, 7 of 12 shooting, 4 for 8 from 3, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. For anybody that is slandering Saddiq Bey and telling him to go and move to New York and they want Troy Weaver to trade him, look at the box score of these last 10 games. Saddiq Bey has been stepping up and taking on the role of the Heat coming off the bench. He's been playing great. He's picking his shots, playing efficient. And I really like the way he has been involving himself and integrating himself with the backups and a little bit when he first comes in the first quarter with the starters. It's really nice to see him kind of find his groove. And it's just to show how, just like the past 2 years, he kind of starts out the season a little quiet, and then right around All-Star break starts to hit it into gear. And he's done that these last 3 weeks. And I've really been happy to see Saddiq kind of starting to hit his stride. And him and Bojan are really the two most consistent players on the Pistons. And I'm really happy to see that as a Saddiq fan.
Yeah, and you go over Saddiq's last 10 games and how well he's been playing. At this point last year, this is when he started kicking it up a notch. Yeah. And this is when he started playing good last year. So if you look at this year and the fact that we have Bojan, at least in this season so far, in the beginning of the year, be the Saddiq that we wanted to be.
Right.
And Bojan took that role. And now that Saddiq is finally starting to get into a groove, guess what? Now we have 2 reliable, consistently good scorers.
Right.
And if you add a third one in with Cade coming back and you have Ivy and everybody, just the gang's all back together, this point next year, this record should be much better than it is. Yeah. And this team is going to be much different. Because just imagine Cade flying around, dropping at least 20 every night. Ivy probably is going to range from 16 to 20 every night. Mm-hmm. Bojan's at least going to get his 25. Saddiq, 20 to 25. Right. So you have these weapons. And Saddiq hitting his groove now is showing you that this time next year, if he doesn't keep on what he's doing right now, this time next year, he's going to be back to where he is right now. And that's exciting to see.
Yeah, in this Suns defense, I want to kind of talk about that a little bit. They are very savvy and they are suffocating. And we saw again tonight, Saban Lee giving Killian Hayes issues at the half-court line. He was pressing them basically the whole time they matched up against each other. And we are starting to see teams game plan to suffocate Killian Hayes. And it's unfortunate because he was hitting his stride about 2.5 weeks ago. And after this Paris game, it just seems that every team is game planning against him, not because he's the Pistons' best player, but because they know that him coming off the bench, they can suffocate him and take away his game. And it's really unfortunate to see his stat line. What is his stat line there?
Yeah, 4 points, 1 rebound, 3 assists, 1 steal, 2 turnovers, 3 fouls. He only made 1 shot the entire game.
Yeah.
It was a 3.
And, you know, when you look at Killian Hayes' stat line and it looks like that, you can almost guarantee it's a Pistons loss. Yep. The Pistons got away with it yesterday against Charlotte. They took advantage of another poor team. You hate to see that from Killian Hayes. And it's 2 games in a row now that it was blatantly obvious that a Suns game plan was to suffocate Killian Hayes. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah. You look at the last couple games, everybody is game planning for Killian. But you can understand why, given his hot stretch of January.
Right.
He was playing out of his mind, and it was finally coming in and recognizing he's got this, and you could tell. He had that swagger to him. Mm-hmm. But now that teams are game planning for him, you take away that playmaker. We don't really have a playmaker on in rotation.
You got to hope Ivy steps
Yeah.
up, which tonight he kind of did, but it didn't translate into a win.
Yeah, and if Ivy doesn't step up, who do we have? Because Alec Burks is a guard. He's not a he can facilitate, but that's not what he's known for. He's known for being a playmaker, shot creator, and a shooter overall. And then you look at like Bojan. Bojan could be a facilitator, but that's not his role either. Bay could be a facilitator, but that's also not his role. So we need a guy like Killian to step in because he is that true point guard. He's the guy that's going to facilitate the offense and make sure we get points. And I think if the Suns wouldn't have game planned for him tonight, he would have been
a bounce back game.
Yeah, a bounce back game, and it would have led to at least a tighter competition.
Yeah, and you hope that you see Killian kind of getting double teamed. You hope that Sadiq standing in the corner would come in to help him, or you sometimes see Jalen Duren try to give him some help, maybe on a screen. But the guys I just don't find them really helping out Killian. Like they just don't seem to be recognizing that he's getting suffocated and approached, and they just don't really help them. So I hope that in film, Casey kind of makes that known to the team that, hey guys, come and help out Killian, because I'm yelling in the stands, help him out. Like they weren't really helping him out. So I'd like to see what happens in this next game Monday against the Celtics, because I'm really hoping for a bounce back game from Killian, and hopefully that the Celtics don't game plan against him, because if they do, Killian's got to hold his head up and try to get tough on defense, and hopefully that translates to some offense, because that's not necessarily something we see from Killian, because he's an elite defender, and I don't think he sometimes leans on that as much as he should. I think he gets a couple ticky-tack fouls here and there and kind of gives up on the defensive end, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's something I wanted to make note of before we wrap up today's recap, was ticky-tack fouls.
Yeah.
Typically we see Isaiah Livers, Jalen Duren kind of rack up fouls kind of quick because they fall for all the fakes, and that happened again tonight. And hopefully that's being addressed in practices. Hey, we got to cool it on these fouls. And if we are going to foul, we can't do it so rapidly. If we get one, we have to chill out while also keeping our defense tough. We only saw 7 minutes from Isaiah Livers tonight. What do you think that was about?
I think he had tweaked something, because normally he'd at least have 10 minutes or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He only shot the ball one time. It was a 3 and he missed. He had 2 turnovers, 2 fouls, and only 7 minutes played. So that leads me to think he tweaked something maybe in his shoulder again, and it's bugging him. So it's like he needs to be reevaluated and just try and see what he can do.
Right.
But in a game like today, he would have been perfect to give us a boost, not only on offense, but on defense as well.
Right.
And something must have happened, because we didn't see him for the rest of the game. And normally in a game like this, he would have played.
Right. Especially most of the game, especially the first half, it was kind of a close game. I would have expected to see Livers a little bit more than 7 minutes. We'll want to keep a close eye on that against the Boston Celtics. See if maybe he turns into day-to-day on the injury report, or maybe he does keep playing and he's just having limited minutes. I'm kind of interested to see what happens with him in the coming days. Before we wrap up today's recap, Ryan, any last thoughts?
Isaiah Stewart, you had a great game tonight. Yeah. 17 points, 9 boards, 2 assists, 1 steal, only 1 turnover, which is good, and only 3 fouls.
Yeah.
He played great tonight. We look at halftime. He was going into halftime with like 7 points, and then he finishes with 17.
Yeah.
10 points in the third quarter alone, pretty much. So he was a key factor on us being even close to at least the Suns 116 tonight.
Right.
But other than him, overall, offensively, we were kind of there, but we weren't there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hopefully we can kind of see what happens in this next game against the Boston Celtics. Typically, the Pistons are flirting with 116, 120 like the Suns were. Tonight, kind of a low average for them with finishing with 100. Well, that will wrap up today's Revved Up recap of Pistons versus the Suns. Before you guys leave, make sure to go follow us on Instagram and We have been posting clips from our Detroit trip. Guys warming up. We got Jaden Ivey, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton warming up before tonight's game. So go check out all those clips on Instagram and make sure to like and subscribe and put your notifications.